Hey guys, welcome to episode 15 of SG Explained. This is Rovik here coming in right before the episode just to say hi and also to apologize because we had our first technical difficulty of our season. This happened around the 20-minute mark of our episode and we lost around 10 minutes of recording. If you don't know, we actually record all of our episodes live on Facebook in order to get you, our audience, to interact with us. Unfortunately, Facebook Live had some technical difficulties and we lost that chunk of episode. So you may notice an interlude where I basically announced that technical disruption. So again, apologies. The episode was great. We were very happy to get Martin. Tune in and enjoy.
Hey guys,
Rovik here.
this is Willie.
Yeah, no surprise. Welcome to episode 15. We are very excited. As we normally do, we're going to be sharing all of this on our socials. So,
All right. Yeah. So how many episodes have we done already, Rovik?
we have done 14 episodes.
Oh my, you're keeping track. Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know because I upload them. But today is actually a very special episode because we're going to be trying something completely different. We've had guest hosts before, but this
That
is
was Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot and even Zil. But this is the first time we're actually bringing someone in to talk to.
Yeah.
And and actually you can hear him right now because he's on the side.
Really, I couldn't tell who's this. Yeah.
Without further ado, let us actually introduce our guest speaker before we show him. This person is the executive director of the Majurity Trust, which is a philanthropic organization that aims to create social impact programs in Singapore. This person was also the formerly executive director of the Institute of Societal Leadership at SMU and the co-founder of Halogen Foundation. He's done a lot of motivational speaking and training, and he has experiences in a bunch of leadership roles and helping people in leadership roles, both in private and public sectors.
Wow, that's an incredible resume.
Yeah.
And speaking of resumes,
actually, that's a good point.
Yeah, exactly what we are leading in today. We're talking about, I don't know whether we'll be talking about resume building, but
no, we're not going to be doing skills building here, but we're actually going to be talking about hiring, the whole process of hiring, and the reason why this is relevant. Actually, let's introduce our guest.
So, moving the camera, and whoops, here we go. And who do we have?
Maybe you have to tilt the camera a bit.
Okay, sorry about that. There we go. Whoops, sound. Okay, a bit clumsy today.
See, we're all trying something new.
Okay.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
Martin, maybe you want to
squeeze a little bit.
Okay.
Right in. Hey guys, nice and cozy. Today is the first time we're gonna have 3 people.
Yeah. Martin is actually the person I was describing. He is the executive director of the Majurity Trust. Martin, you want to say hi?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Actually, your first guest.
Yeah, you're our first ever guest who we're going to be chatting with.
I'm number 30 of the people you asked. I'm the only one that said yes.
No, you're actually number 1 of the people I asked. I'm very glad you said yes. No, that would have been very embarrassing. Actually, more people are going to be listening to us than watching us. So, yeah, the voice is all that matters if you want any advice. But yeah, the reason why we brought you in is because you've been working on something cool at the Majurity Trust with the social enterprise called Tangent. And you know, fill in the blanks if I miss out anything, but Tangent aims to broaden the talent base available to companies and create opportunities for people to find work that they will thrive in. And you guys aim to do that by removing the unconscious bias in current hiring practices. So that's a big question we're going to be talking about. Like, actually,
that's a good summary.
Yeah, is hiring practices currently actually as fair and as well thought out as we like to think it is? Yeah, is that accurate?
That's a good summary of what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for us at the Majurity Trust, it's a new outfit.
Okay.
It's a new philanthropic organization, and our goal really, as the name Majurity is spelled Majurity. So Maju is a big part of our DNA to advance, to progress as a society,
right.
As a population as a whole. So we are 100% focused here in Singapore on social causes. And as an organization, we look at different gaps and different challenges that we think the country faces to a certain extent. So Tangent was born as a result of that. It was born as a result of this really, the way I phrase it is that it's both a frustration as well as an aspiration.
Right.
The frustration is that we keep saying that there is not enough talent here in Singapore. And it leads to a wide myriad of other challenges that comes along with that particular frame.
Sure.
I can't find talent, I could find it from somewhere else. But the reality is that we all know that we have talent here in Singapore. We know that. We know that because they are our classmates, they are our schoolmates, they are people that we know, we have worked with. But they don't often get surfaced because they don't usually maybe have the right education pedigree, they don't graduate from the right school with the right degree. These days, even if you are a degree holder, which I think majority of people, I think over 60% people have a bachelor's degree, are you a first class honors? Are you a second class honors? So the type of degrees, right? The level of degrees. And then if you move up from there is what school you come from. Are you from Ivy League school or non-Ivy League school? Then you realize that the pool gets lesser and lesser and lesser. And all of a sudden, we keep hiring people with the same selection pool. And then we say that, hey, there's not enough talent. But they are. They just may not fit our stereotype of what we think talent to be.
Right.
Or what we call the biases of what talent should look like.
Right.
So that's the frustration piece, right? There are talent in Singapore, and we need to surface it. The aspiration piece is how can we change that?
Sure.
So Tangent was born as a result of that. And we asked ourselves, if this is a challenge, how do we broaden the talent pool in Singapore by looking at the systems that we are working with? And we realized that one of the biggest, or I won't say biggest, one of the common ways that this biases kick in is when we recruit people based on resumes or CVs. Now, recruitment can be split up into 4 unique components. Now, I'm simplifying HR. So for all the HR professional out there, please don't shoot me. Right? I'm not in HR, but if you think of recruitment, it's just in 4 main buckets.
Okay.
You start from the recruitment phase, followed by the shortlist, followed by interview, and followed by offer. These are the 4 main buckets.
Sure.
Okay.
Right? So recruitment, shortlist, interview, and offer. At every stage or every bucket, you will lose talent. The way you recruit, you won't find certain talent.
Sure.
The way you shortlist, you will lose talent. The way you interview, you will lose talent. And when you offer, it doesn't mean that everybody will take your offer, right?
So
you will lose
this is talent that you're talking about.
that you want to buy, right? Surface to you. So these are the 4-step process. A large part of what the HR practitioners or the hiring landscape today works is that we tend to say that, you know what, when you apply, I put an ad, I use different websites and portals, and we say, please submit your resumes, right? And then we get 200, 300 resumes that get through, or we have a portal that we look at people's profiles, their experience, education, degree, and so on. With that, what we do is that we move to the shortlisting phase, where I'm an employer. I got 280 resumes I used to hire admin and finance manager. I'll be very honest, and this is public, so I'm going to confess out in the open. I had 280 resumes to come in for an admin and finance job. How do I shortlist them with the resumes? I look at, hey, what education profile do they have? Which university they graduate from? Do they fit the kind of profile that I'm looking for, right? So immediately I sieve out those that does not have degrees. Does it mean that they are not the right fit for the job? Absolutely not. It's just that because of my selection process, I have sort of say, you know what, they are not within the selection pool I'm looking for, or the shortlist pool. So the unconscious bias that we all have starts kicking in, all right? The unconscious bias of educational pedigree, of gender, of age, and of relevant experience. Sometimes when we think of the things that people want to do, they may not have the necessary experience, but if you give them time, they can actually be very, very good for the job. They're just not given the opportunity. And then we move to the interview phase, where we then look at, oh, you know what, I'm down to 20 people. I will introduce psychometric assessment just to make sure that I find the right candidate in the 20 that's shortlisted. And then I offer maybe out of 2 positions I have, I find 3 that I really want, so that just in case if one say no to me, I still get the other 2. Right?
Sure.
That's a typical process.
Sure.
The problem is when we use psychometric assessment at the interview phase, we have already lost all the talent that we otherwise would not choose. Tangent aims to answer the question by saying, why don't we move the psychometric assessment as the hiring phase or the recruitment phase instead of the interview phase? So we introduce the psychometric assessment right at the beginning. so that it removes all the biases from us, right? It takes away whatever decision that we have to make. We just have to identify what is our company's unique profile, which is what Tangent do. I come to you as a company and I say, you know what, if you're looking at hiring talent, why don't we create a profile for your company? Now, an accountant in your company will be very different from an accountant, say, in the Singapore government. Maybe a very different company, an accountant is needed in Virgin Active, for example, because they all have a unique company DNA. Same job type, but different personality types, right? So if I can create a benchmark of what your company is, when I start the recruitment process, I no longer say, please submit your resumes. All I say is, please scan this QR code, please click here, and then what you do is you just take this psychometric assessment. We take all the candidates that come in, we filter them through the company profile, and then I now know, based on the attributes that your companies are looking for, what is the right fit. And then you move to the interview phase where we reintroduce the resumes because hiring managers still need something to hook onto, right? And say, you know, I want to know your CCA, I want to know your sports. So in a certain extent, for Tangent, we're not trying to disrupt the entire hiring landscape completely. We're just prioritizing what is important and using psychometric assessment by flipping it from the interview phase right to the recruitment phase. We have the ability now to remove all the biases, the inherent biases that we might have, and then it creates opportunities for far more people than otherwise our traditional method will see us losing them.
See, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Sorry, that was a long spiel.
No, I appreciate that because that gives
That's
us
the end of the episode.
the exact.
Well,
I was gonna say you basically answered all our questions already. No, I'm kidding. No, it's an important framing because I can appreciate the way we think about recruitment now, all the way from what were the 4 stages you said?
So recruitment, shortlist, interview, and offer.
Right. I was gonna say you could probably put in like a probationary period as well. Sometimes.
Well, I think all companies have like a 3 months, 6 months probation, right?
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, the standard HR process doesn't change. We are very mindful that what we're asking for of the market is to really rethink hiring. Now, I don't want to say that we're disrupting. We are trying to have some level of disruption, but we want to do it in a way that the market will respond to it. So, because the goal for Tangent isn't to be the only platform or the system. We are, to a certain extent, platform agnostic. We're not here to sell products, right? Our goal is to rally enough companies who will say, you know what, maybe it's true. Maybe I don't have to hire using resumes anymore. I want to hire differently. I want to find talent. I want to find the people that I otherwise wouldn't get and see, right? Because they'll be discriminated against in the whole process and so on. But I don't have a way to do it, or it's too costly a way to do it. What is the option out there? So Tangent is trying to create an option.
I see. So speaking of, you just brought up discrimination. I heard it, right? So what do you, I think the most poignant question I really want to ask today is so do you think there is still a large amount of discrimination in the workplace right now? Especially during the hiring process. Do you think discrimination is very rampant in hiring? Well,
I have to say that discrimination is a big and heavy word, right? I would say conscious bias leads into some form of discrimination, right?
Okay.
Because discrimination is a object. A better way of phrasing it is a deliberate acting out of a bias that you know that you have.
One would even argue that discrimination is part of the hiring process.
Well, you could say that. In a classic way, if you think about how our education system is designed, there is some form of discrimination in, right? It's supposed to spread you out in terms of your learning abilities, your learning styles, where potentially you can go in the future. Are you good in science? Are you good in language, and so on? So to a certain extent, which is why I said that discrimination is a very heavy word, because when you use discrimination, it has a negative connotation to it, right? To a certain extent, our education does it in a good intention, right? Looking at what your talent profile is, and say that, you know what, you might be suited for this trajectory or this work. In a hiring landscape, I think we do that. We do that by saying that, hey, you know what, we think that this kind of skill sets must be more relevant to this kind of industry, right? Some people who are better in numbers would ideally be an accountant, right, or be in a finance industry. Some people who are artistically good should be in the creative industry. Now,
Sure.
that's our classic way of looking at talent. That's our classic way of looking at skill sets. And that's how we have been doing it. But the reality is, there are some people who are really gifted in numbers, are also very gifted in art.
I'm not surprised.
Sure.
Right? There are some people who are really good in numbers, but really don't like being an accountant.
Of course.
But they're just good at it.
Of course.
Right? It doesn't mean they're passionate about it. The goal for the Majurity Trust is to build thriving communities. So when we look at occupations, when we look at companies, how do people thrive in their job is when they find the right attributes for the right fit for the right job. And if we can get companies to rethink that formula of hiring in terms of discrimination, right? So I would take one step back and say, you know what, maybe if we don't see it in a negative light and we give the benefit of doubt to employers, a lot of it may be unconscious bias. When we look at resumes, we tell ourselves, you know what, maybe this person's background is more suited for it. They may not be able to articulate that, oh, I did that because I saw this person is the president of the Photographer Society, right? Because when we read the resume, that's what kicks in. It's the stereotype that you create of that person. So the more we can actually remove those biases, the better the system might become.
So what I'm hearing, and what I'm actually thinking through when it comes to hiring is that there are probably two key areas, right? The first is you're talking about how do you overcome negative discrimination, right? Which is like, excluding people who, could be basically the best person for the job, but because of some kind of stereotyping based on gender, race, ability, like as in physical ability, then you discriminate them. And what I'm hearing is that there is this methodology could potentially address that. And I'm also hearing progressively when you look at, maybe not even identity-based discriminators, but also just overall, does this person have a hidden skill, or does this person have maybe a more a skill that needs to be tuned out a bit more? Then you're also being able to find that, because you're not looking at just grades or a stereotypical picture of a person. You're basically looking at that. Maybe, so I'm actually interested, because let me give you some statistics that I found that can maybe frame this, right? So from 2012 to October 2018, TAFEC, which is a tripartite alliance for fair and progressive employment practices, and we'll talk about who they are a bit later. They basically issued a statement saying that they received 1,600 complaints on workplace issues when it came to discrimination. And amongst those, some of them were about persons with disabilities, some of them were about age-based discrimination. And these numbers tend to average around 10 to 20% of the overall complaints that happen. So, and then, we're also hearing about, for example, recently with the HIV leak that happened, right? A lot of concerns about, bosses potentially using that as an opportunity to fire people, to let go of people. Is discrimination and bias, as you mentioned, actually a big deal in Singapore? Like, is that something that you're seeing, or is that, like how is that like? Because I imagine that in Singapore, with so much cultural norms and so much cultural inclinations, that's something that could be blanketed as just like, oh, like that's just the way we do things.
Well, first and foremost, I'm not an expert in workplace culture to a certain extent in terms of in terms of the discriminatory possibilities there are in workplaces.
Right.
I've been lucky enough to be an employer and a lot of times, and in offices, what we try to do is to build a culture that everybody is there to support each other.
Right.
Now, I recognize that it may not be like 100% of all companies think that way, that every employee is valued in a certain way. Right?
Sure.
So there are cases that I know of people, friends of mine, who have to fight their company because they were pregnant, and after they gave birth, they were fired, or before they gave birth, they were fired.
Yeah, that sucks.
Right, it sucks, right?
Yeah.
And then when you talk to the companies, or when they seek some help for mediation, the companies will say, well, it's bad performance. Right? It's just so coincidence that you fire the person before the maternity or before the person gave birth and so on. Now, are there grounds for people to fire if it's gross misconduct, if it's really incompetence or lack of performance? I think companies must have the ability to do that. I don't think any employee should be hiding behind discrimination to say, oh, you're firing because of, and then we relinquish our responsibility as an employee to perform.
Sure.
You get me? It cuts both ways, right? Both for the employer as well as for the employee. But at the same token, as I put this responsibility on all of us as employee, I myself being one of my boss, the reality is that employers have to be sensitive, right? Employers have to know, hey, there's certain things I cannot do. Right? If we take HAFAC, for example, the reality is that we have enough legislation against discrimination. We have enough legislation now against some of the situations where employers cannot fire someone because she's pregnant. Right? We cannot fire someone because of disability to an extent. Even right now, when you place an ad for recruitment, you can no longer say you're looking for Chinese. You cannot, also race cannot be there.
Hey guys, this is exactly where the technical disruption happened. So we're just going to skip on ahead to where we have good recording.
Okay, where were we? Sorry for the interruption, guys. So we're back online.
We had a technical difficulty.
Yeah, modern day problems. So
First world problems.
First world problems, yeah. Monday. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, we were talking about variables in hiring. And do you think it's just going to be continuing adding all these variables?
Yeah.
And you said,
I think your question is a good one. Are we adding more variables in the equation? And I think my point before the commercial break, we should really think about commercial break.
We should, right?
So my point before the commercial break is that if we go back to the point that the economy shouldn't be seen as purely a production line where you need warm bodies as workers to fill certain jobs, we need to start looking at people as a whole.
Sure.
Right? People that we need to develop. People we need to develop both as a country, so be it the government, as a company, where my talent is the people that I grow. And often or not, if I grow a talent, it may not benefit me because the person move on, it will benefit another company.
Sure.
But someone else doing for another staff will benefit me. Because the economy is just, that's how it works. Everybody moves. And if we all treat our workers right, if we all treat them as an individual person, then we all benefit.
I suppose, this definitely is both ways, right?
It works both ways.
If you have an employee who's really exploitative, then I suppose investing in him only to see him leave, it's really painful at the same time.
Correct.
Yeah.
And replacement cost is high.
Exactly.
Right? So the more we can develop a person, the better it is. So to your question, are we adding more things? Which is why I was hesitating when answering. The answer is yes, we are adding more things that we look at. But the way I will frame it is that we should have been doing this in the past. Right? We just don't have the methodology or the ability to do it. Because if I want to understand you as a person, what makes you tick, what motivates you, what's your interest profile, what gives you stress, we never had that ability to do it on a mass scale level. Therefore, we default to something manageable, which is I look at resumes, right? What do I look at resumes? I look at not just your education in your resumes, I look at what CCAs you're involved in, or extracurricular. I make a mental note that, oh, you are a secretary in the football club, you are the vice captain, and then you were part of the boys brigade, and you attain a rank of a staff sergeant, for example. Now, what do I do as an employer? I make a mental note of your attributes, right? This person is resilient enough, this person is accomplished, a high accomplisher, this person has some discipline in order to rise to staff sergeant. We do this at the back of envelope calculation very quickly, right? So we do that, and we do want to find those attributes. We just never had the ability to do that on an en masse basis.
Sometimes would you think that it's sometimes a little bit counterintuitive as well, because people are trained to basically give an interview, trained to actually write a good resume, right? Even sometimes even trained to consider how they should put themselves for psychometric tests. I'll say that even companies even go down to your Facebook and Instagram.
It's very wide now.
Right. Just to see how you are. And I think there are some employees who also don't want to be friends with their bosses online, like Facebook. I know I've been trying to add this staff of mine, but it just never accepts my.
Very touchy topic.
As a practice, I have as an employer, I don't add my staff on Facebook as a practice,
right?
Because
if they add you,
I'm fine. Okay, it has to be what they want to do,
right?
Okay. Because I think as employers we have a due responsibility not to place a burden. Right. Exactly what you just said, right? If my boss add me on Facebook, Now it's me having to make a decision. Do I say yes? Do I say no? If I say yes, am I seen as wanting to show off my life to my boss? If I say no, what will my boss think of me? Right? That's the reality of how an employee will react when a boss starts adding. Right? So for me personally, as a matter of principle, I never add my staff.
Okay.
Right? But if they want to add me, I'm perfectly fine. Unless they will start, I knew beforehand that I've added on Facebook, and then it comes in as a different story.
I mean, I'm saying that people are beginning to also consider dressing their lives, dressing it, and I suppose these things are becoming much more unclear as well.
True.
Yeah, and so I think I mean that's why if in university or sometimes you have these like career preparation courses, right? How should you speak? What should you say? And these are like your supposedly 10-year series allows you to land a job effectively. I suppose. Do you think that isn't really the case sometimes? I mean, do you think that is a good way of getting a job? Because since we are trying to get more data and try to understand a good fit, that's what I think we're trying to do. But don't you think that these things are also counterintuitive at the same time?
Well, I think everyone wants to succeed, and because everybody wants to succeed, they will do almost everything to prepare for it. Right. So, am I therefore saying that we should no longer look at how a person dressed? No, I think that's part and parcel of discipline. Do we therefore no longer look at, during my interview process, I ask the questions that will tease out the character, ethics kind of question? I think we should still have. So remember when I first talked about the 4-step process, you will realize that when we talk about disrupting hiring, I don't change that 4-step process at all. I don't replace interview at all.
Right.
Interview is still needed for us to verify. Because the reality is that when we introduce the psychometric assessment at the start, all we're wanting to do is to take away all the biases so that we get a data clean. And we filter the data during the shortlisting phase based on the company benchmark. Right? So that is an important aspect for us. Now, a good question which you alluded to is that can I game a psychometric assessment? Right? Which is your point earlier, right?
It's going to be almost every Singaporean's
trying to
parents like prescription right now. There's a psychometric test,
so therefore you can take a class.
It's a 10-year series. And
I mean, I could change my MBTI
to a certain extent. This is the way I tell companies, because it's a very common question. That's what the interview is for. You can try to game a system, but psychometric assessments and profiling tools are getting more sophisticated today. That there's enough data points to tell you whether this person is sort of gaming the system or not.
Right.
You will not get the kind of profile that you want. Right? Now, a good way of looking at a psychometric profile or assessment is that it's really a mirror. It's not a test. Right? What you want is to be able for people to know you. It's not for people to know the you that you want them to know. It's for people to know you, because the right fit comes when you are true to yourselves. Right? Now, if I'm working for a German company, for example, if I'm going to interview in a German company, I, as an employee, start thinking the German company is high on precision, efficiency, for example, punctuality. These are traits within the German work culture, for example.
Sure.
Again, very stereotype. It may be fun-loving and stuff like that. They probably are. Then you think about me trying to game the system. Therefore, I must be like that, right? You can get through to the interview phase. When they start looking at their resume and then they start interviewing you, they'll probably know, you know what, this is very different from the profile that I've seen. Right? Because your life cannot lie. You can game one company, you can't game every company, because every company looks for different things. Right? So you can say that, oh, I can change my psychometric assessment based on different companies. Yes, you can, but you cannot change your experience, you cannot change who you are and your references. So when we hire people, we always have to look at 360-degree look, which is why we have references, which is why we call and say that, hey, give me a little bit more information about this guy. What do you think? So I think you can lie to a person once. I don't think you can lie to a person twice. And my point to employees is that, why would you want to do that? Your goal is to find the best company for you. That's your goal. If you start changing who you are, you're never going to grow in a company.
Are there situations where an individual is just not fit for any company, or rather a majority of companies?
They could be an entrepreneur, which is a very, very good option for many people. Now, I have to say that when we are young, our ability to try and fail is there, right?
Yep.
So I wouldn't, because this is for public, I don't want people to listen in and say, oh, therefore I'm not, I can't find the right fit, therefore I'm not going to work, right?
Okay.
And then they go with the parents, and the parents they're at 30 years old. Oh, I heard a podcast, sometime back, and the people there say that, if I don't find the right fit, I won't be happy. That I'm very mindful that that's not how life works.
Okay.
Right? We will have our setbacks, and that's part and parcel of learning. There are some of us were lucky enough. The first job, we are very happy and we grow from there. There's some of us who our first job is the worst job ever, and then we realize, no, that's not who I am. All what we are trying to do at Tangent is to give people a higher possibility of success. Right? So people ask me, Martin, what is the success of Tangent? Right? I think it's a very genuine question. How would you decide whether Tangent is successful or not? And my point to them is that I'm not an affirmative action initiative. Tangent is not there to increase minorities. Tangent is not there to increase disability, employment. Tangent is not there to be an affirmative action. Tangent is there with a very clear value proposition to companies and employees. Create more opportunities, widen the talent pool by changing the way we think about hiring. The way I measure the success of Tangent is how many % of people have been given an opportunity for an interview they otherwise would never have. Right? So if I take my pilot last year, 1,200 actually took the psychometric assessment. They don't submit the resumes. They click on the QR, they scan a QR code, they click on the link. All they did was to put the demographic profile, take a 90-minute assessment, and brought it down to 30 minutes now. And they wait for news whether they fit the filter or not. Of the 1,200, 860 of them completed the assessment. Of the 860, the oldest candidate was 72 years old, the youngest was 20. 1/3 of them have no college degrees. About slightly under 1/3 of them have no background in the financial industry.
Sure.
Right? From 860, we brought down to 88 candidates. And we asked them to submit a video resume of themselves. Not a resume, but really our campaign was what we were looking for different. So we said that, 3 minutes, tell us why you're different. And a 47-year-old who, father of 5, asked the 2 teenage daughters and interviewed him. So he was wearing shorts on the bottom of HDB block. This maybe 14-year-old girl, his daughter, was asking, so daddy, why are you different? Right? So that's their way of showing how different they are. From that 88, we filtered down to 40 candidates who were invited for interview. Of the 40, slightly over 20% have no college degree. Slightly below 20% have no financial background. Now, that to me is what Tangent is about.
Right.
I have just given 20% of these people an opportunity that they will otherwise never have. Now, once they're at that stage, I'm going to tell them, it's up to you now. My job is to get you through the door. Right? You now have an opportunity to be able to convince the other person that you are worthwhile for the job. All right? This 40 went down to 14, and then Diamond Asia offered 8. All 8 accepted. Remember, I was telling you the offer stage, you will lose talent as well, right? If you don't have the right fit, the person is going to leave.
Sure.
They offered 8, all 8 accepted. Of the 8, 2 of them have no college degree, 2 of them have no relevant experience. And they're doing well.
That's very cool. So I guess, just to bring this all back to SG Explained as a mission and purpose, how do you think this shapes or potentially changes the narrative of how life is in Singapore? Because, there was this very prominent forum that happened recently where a bunch of employees were talking about, changing hiring practices. Minister Ong Ye Kung was there, and he said, I'm encouraging people to think more broadly. The founder of Majurity Trust was there, Dan Young, and he challenged employers to use 10%, right, to do resume blind hiring. How do you think that's going to change the way we see ourselves as Singaporeans? Do you think that's the way it changes how we operate as Singaporeans? Is there potential there?
I think that, I have to believe there is, right? And I really do think there is. First and foremost, I think the narrative, that the fact that our only natural resource are people.
Right.
And that holds true 50 years ago is hold true to today. Right? Our only natural resource, our geographical location is a natural resource as well, but that's that's a topic for another time.
Yeah, entrepreneur, we got it also.
It's on your list somewhere. Yeah. The reality is that people are our natural resource. if we do not broaden the talent base of how people choose talent, we are just shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right.
That's true.
Right? So it's key for us, it's almost imperative for our survival, that as a country as small as ours and as globally connected as ours, it's almost imperative for us to rethink the way that we define what talent is. More and more, it cannot be defined by academic excellence. More and more, it cannot be. More and more, it cannot be defined or be biased against by gender, by age, by relevant experience. Because when you are as small as we are, and as globally collected as we are, and as thriving as we are, you need all hands on deck. And the all hands on deck cannot be a uniform, homogeneous way of looking at what talent is about.
Yeah.
Because we are shortchanging ourselves. And I think that's key. I think that's key for us. I won't say that it's about changing the narrative. I think the narrative has always been there, that we've always valued people as the resource that will help grow this country. And we've always valued the fact that education is the leveler so that everybody has an opportunity. Now, I think the key for us is to say that, hey, if talent is out there, the question is, are we finding them? Right. It cannot be the frustration that we have is that there's no talent in Singapore. I refuse to believe that. And I know that for a fact because I have family, I have friends whom I know they may not have the education that some of us have, but they are great talent. They just may not have been given the opportunity.
Awesome.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah, we have one last question we're gonna ask every guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is something
Starting with you.
Yeah,
okay.
Starting with you.
With every guest, okay.
Yeah. So because this is as you explained, what does it mean for you? So if you want to give a cliche answer, that's up to you. But what does it mean for you to be a Singaporean? We're trying to figure it out for ourselves, and we want to hear it from everyone else.
Wow. What does it mean to be a Singaporean? My passport, my identity. Right. This wasn't fed to me in the beginning, so I didn't have time to think about it.
I think I put it there somewhere.
Somewhere.
Oh yes, I know where it is. Right here.
Oh, I see. Oh, there it is. Oh. Okay, I did read. I think to be a Singaporean is to have an ideology of pragmatism. I think that's the best way I can put it. I'm a big admirer of the United States. I really am. And friends who know me know that I'm crazy about politics and understanding American politics. America's ideology is very aspirational. They have the ability to, their goal is to rid tyranny around the world. If you go to Washington, D.C., which I know you have, at the monument, it says their goal is to rid tyranny around the world. And it's highly aspirational there. If you ask any kid in junior high and say, what's your aspiration in America? President of the United States of America. They believe that they can be. Maybe now not so, right? It's a different time. Right. For me, Singapore's ideology has always been pragmatism. And I appreciate that because we are small. We're trying to punch above our weight. It's not the easiest thing to do. In my previous role in the Singapore Management University, I had the privilege of meeting very senior leaders and interview them and sit with them. And I realized that what we have today is not by fluke, it's by sheer hard work. And there's a price. There's a price for peace. And the reality of us being able to who we are today is because there was peace. Right? There's general peace. There's no war during our time. And because there's no war, we could profit from it. We can grow from it. So being pragmatic in the sense that what works for our country may not work for everybody else, but it works for us. And I would like a country to be more idealistic. And I think we're slowly getting there. I've always said that, you know what, if there's any country in the world that can be 100% carbon emission free, it should be Singapore. Right? We're small enough if you think about it. I mean, we can ban chewing gum, right? So can we be 100% carbon emission free? We can, right? So, but we're pragmatic. We realize that some things take time. The technology is not there. It's not cost effective. So that's how we are. And I don't think we should lose them. I think we should constantly know our place and our role in the world and know what works for our people, because I think the preoccupation of any government should be the well-being of its citizens. Right? And that might mean the well-being on the community around us. Right. because it directly impacts who we are. So that ideology of pragmatism is an important one. So to me, what makes me a Singaporean, or what I think it's a Singaporean, is that ability to navigate the world and say be pragmatic in our response, in the way we are friends with everybody, in the way that it doesn't matter I'm from a small country. I know my place in the world. I'm proud of my place in the world. I know that it takes hard work to maintain that it's not something that I should take for granted, but something that I should be very proud of, and something that I should need to ensure that my children have the ability to say the same thing that I say today. Right? Because the previous generation did it for us. You mentioned in the introduction that I started the Halogen Foundation. We train young people in leadership development, and there's a saying that we have that I use still today, that we want to repay the debt we owe the previous generation by serving the next. The reason why I do what I do today, the reason why a lot of my volunteers, a lot of my staff do what we do today, is because we want to repay the debt we owe the previous generation by serving the next. And I think if we all have that ability to say that, you know what, I am who I am the Singaporean that I am, because our forefathers have paid the price for where we are today, then our responsibility is to say, will our next generation be as proud to say that this is the country they are? Now, it does not mean that everything is rosy. Can things become better? Absolutely. But we need to have those conversations, which is what SG Explainer is all about.
Yeah, wow.
Is that a good plug? Is that a good plug for you?
Oh, awesome. Great way to bring it back. So,
Like we need a permanent speaker.
on that note, thank you so much, Martin, for coming down.
Thank you,
on a
Martin.
Monday
Thank you
night.
very much.
It's a pleasure.
We would love to keep this conversation going both on and offline. So if you are listening in and you want to get in touch, Martin, how can people reach out to you?
Well, you can email me, martintan@majurity.sg, majurity.sg, or there's a public page. You can link me on Facebook. It's just Martin Tan Singapore. You should be able to find me. And I'm very mindful it's a podcast. It's going to live forever. Right?
Yeah.
As long as you don't take it down, it's going to live forever. So somewhere, somehow, someone watching this right now, that is the year 2050, and then you're wondering what these three guys are talking about. There used to be something called resumes. You may not believe it, but there used to be something called resumes.
This is an artifact.
But because of tangent, things have changed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to all our listeners and audience, thanks for tuning in. And
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you in the next episode.
See you, man.
See
All
you
right.
guys.
Good night.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We're really glad to have you following us for the past 15 episodes. If you have been listening consistently, please do leave a review, rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any other podcast platform you are on, because those reviews help us get to a wider audience and get more people to understand what it means to live in this country. So please share, please rate, and please review. Till the next episode. See you.